Hello everyone, thank you for joining me today. In today's tutorial I will be showing you how to use spare wire from our last project to make a simple beaded chain bracelet like this. Now for our last project we had used 20 gauge and 26 gauge dead soft copper wire. Now we won't be needing the 26 gauge for this project, but we will need the 20 gauge. We'll also be using about 3 inches of 18 gauge and 6 inches of 16 gauge, along with the beads of your choice. Now here is some of the spare wire I will be using. Now as you can see, I have different things in here, including items like this that I had gotten around for just use of the spare wire so I can use them for other projects. Without having to think about it, I can just go and grab things that are already ready for me for different things, like this piece here. And I also have some jump rings in here and a few other things, and the starts of some end caps or bead cones. And here's the start of a chain that I had used spare wire to make spiral beads from, and I will show you how to make these in a later tutorial. Today we're primarily just making a very simple chain beaded bracelet. For your tools you will need some flush cutters, some step mandrel pliers, or you can use the round nose pliers as long as you mark a certain area that you're going to be wrapping it around so you have very consistent loops. You're going to need some chain nose pliers and some precision pliers. Now you can use regular needle nose pliers instead of these, but I like these. You'll also need your hammer and hammering block. And if you do not feel like cutting all of the rings for your closure, you can use a hacksaw with some wax. Now to get started, I pulled out some of the 20 gauge wire that I had along with all the other wire. Now I've been working with wire for probably about 10 years now, so I have a really good idea of which gauge is which just by the look and feel of it. Now if you're a beginner and you want to keep your scrap wire to use for other things, I do suggest keeping them in separate containers as per gauge until you get really used to what's what. It can just make things a lot more helpful for you as you go along. And for right now we only need the 20 gauge wire, and these are the beads that I'm going to be using for my bracelets today. I will be making 3 different bracelets. I'm only going to make one on video here, and I think for this one I'll be using the cat eyes, the green cat eyes right here. And it's very simple to get started. Take your precision pliers and just do a 90-degree angle, just like that. And then you will take your mandrel pliers, and I usually use the smallest to the second smallest setting, which I think for this one, since they're larger beads, I'm going to use this larger setting so it has a little bit more swing, and I'm not as worried about the look of the size of the ring being gaudy compared to the bead itself. So now I'm going to take and I'm going to roll that down halfway. So I have what looks like this. And I'm going to, sorry about like that. Actually, I will remove that bead for now. And then you bring this arm over manually. And that will give you a nice little lollipop. You want to hold that in your pliers and then take the other one and wrap it around. Just like this. I wrap them twice and I make sure that it is straightened up and neat as possible, just like that. So that's what you will end up with. Then you take your flush cutters, trim right there. And tamp it down. Alright, now you're going to take your bead and put it down over top of the wire. So it comes down just like this. And this is where your chain nose pliers come in, because you don't want a lot of space here. But I'm going to bend it down right here at a 90-degree angle, just like that. And see, your bead will have a little bit of room on there. You want that because of how this is going to wrap around. So you put your mandrel pliers in. We're going to go right about there. Bring it over halfway, just like we did before. And then bring this arm over and wrap that around so it wraps twice. And then you have your first beaded link. You can use these to make necklaces, earrings, bracelets, anklets. But we are just using it for a bracelet today. We'll set that one off to the side for a second and grab our wire. Do your 90-degree angle and get our loop started. Just roll that down like that, bring it over. Make any adjustments you feel you need to make. And actually, I goofed up because I wanted to attach this to that. No. That's okay, because I can still do that. I'm just going to work in the opposite direction. Let's make sure that's cleaned up. Slide our bead down. Same as before, we take our chain nose pliers and put them right there at the base of the bead. Do our 90-degree angle just like that. Bring in our mandrel pliers and go around halfway and bring it around the other half. So we have a nice little lollipop. That one there is definitely not a nice little lollipop. I don't like that one. We're going to have to make some adjustments. See, I'm not perfect either. That's better. Now instead of wrapping this around right away, what I am going to do is take that and bring it down over top of that bead, just like that. So now I've linked these two together, and once I get this finished, this will be a much stronger structure than if I were to put jump rings in between each one. There's less points of potential weakness of the bracelet, so it has the potential to last you a lot longer. And now we're going to take and wrap it around. Now as you can see, I left the chain nose pliers here, and that holds that into place and helps prevent me from warping it or anything else. Alright. So now we have our two links. Now let's see if this one is long enough to add another link. Might be, but I'm not 100% sure. Might have to use this for a smaller bead, but we'll give it a shot. It looks like it might be long enough. Worst comes to worst, we can cut it off and, well, go ahead and throw this wire into the actual scrap pile, but I think we'll have more than enough. Alright, so we're 3 links in. I'm going to make one more link on the video, and then I will cut to where I start to make the jump rings for the end part of it. And that way you don't have to sit and watch me forever do the same thing over and over again. Alright, so first we need our scrap wire. Put our 90-degree angle in, just like that. Grab your mandrel pliers, and I'm using my second setting for this. Place that on your wire and curl the wire down about halfway. And then instead of taking the mandrel and bringing it around the wire, you're going to bring the wire around the mandrel. This seems to help it to be a little bit more uniform and a little more circular and less just wonky. Grab your arm of it and bring it around your wire I like to make it 2 times. You can make it 1 if you really want to, or 3 or even 4 depending on what look you're going for. In a later video I will show you how to use the scrap wire to make all different kinds of links and just even wire beads and stuff like that, so you can use up some of that wire that you would normally see as scrap and make some really unique pieces that are one-of-a-kind pieces. So now I'm going to take my bead, slide it down, put your chain nose pliers right there on top of that bead, and then do your 90-degree angle just like that. Grab your mandrel pliers and bring them around. And then bring your wire around the mandrels. Do not close that ring up yet because you need to set it onto your beads. Just like that. And you want to take your chain nose pliers and put them right on top of that loop, and that will help keep it sturdy and keep it in place. And then take and wrap your arm around that bar about 2 times. Bring in your flush cutters to give that a nice snip, and then take your pliers and give that a little tap down to make sure that that little piece is set down in there so there's no snags or anything else like that. Alright, now I am going to pause the video here. You can too, so you can catch up. And I'm going to make about 6.5 inches of links with just this before I move on to my next step. So I will see you in a few minutes. Okay, I decided to stop at 6 inches for this bracelet because I still have to add in the length of the jump rings and the hook enclosure settings, which will add about 1 inch to 2 inches depending on how many additional links I add. So to get started, I'm going to do my jump rings. I only need 2 jump rings, but I'm actually going to make 6 because I am going to embellish the jump rings just a little bit, and in doing that it's also going to add a little bit of structural durability to it. Now for this I will be using my ring mandrel, and I'll be using the 3rd setting or the middle setting right there. And to get started, what I do is I put the wire right in there at the center as best as possible, and I try to keep this as uniform and close as possible, and I'll use my hand, my thumb, to keep the wire tight and close to the peg of the mandrel, and then just turning it. Now please don't overextend either wrist in turning because you don't want any wrist issues, and just keep turning until you think you have enough, which I need at least 6 rings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to give myself 2 extra, or at least a little extra, that way if there's any that I don't like, I'm good. Alright, I'm going to pull it off right there. And to make these jump rings, I'll be using my flush cutters. Now if you've never made jump rings like this before or with flush cutters, it's a lot more simple than you think. It does take a little bit of time, but it is still better as far as the cost-value ratio. So first thing you're going to do is take your flush cutters with the flat end towards that wire so that you can get a nice flush cut on the other side, and hold your thumb there to make sure that extra piece doesn't go flying. Now you're going to turn your cutters over so that this flat part is facing away from this, and you're not going to cut this anymore. You're just going to run beside it, and you're going to come down to the next ring and cut there. And that way your ring is flush cut on both sides. And you want to just keep repeating it. So this time here we have that sharp end. Turn your flush cutters over so that flat is over on that side, and snip that bit off just like that. And now that is flush. And repeat by turning this over and giving that a snip. And just keep going until you have all the rings you need. Now I need 6. And because of the way I'm going to be using these, I'm not going to worry about work hardening them. Now when I make the rings with the 16 gauge, I will not be using my flush cutters. I'll be using my hacksaw. Now if you don't have a hacksaw, you can use the flush cutters. I just prefer to use the hacksaw for anything above an 18 gauge. And see, this is that little piece of wire that went flying. That's exactly why you want to keep your thumb over top of that cutting side of your pliers so it doesn't go flying and hit you in the face, or anybody else in the face for that matter. Alright, so they're all cut. I'm going to set them off to the side. And I'm going to get the hook and the closures done. Now to do this, I'm going to pull out my 16 gauge wire. Straighten that up a bit. I don't really suggest using your thumbs like I'm doing, because you can end up cutting your thumb on this part of the wire. I do it a lot, but I don't have my cloth out right now, so it'll do just fine. Now for this one, I'm going to come all the way down here and use the second to largest setting on my mandrel ring. I'm going to start right in the middle just like before and just keep turning. I'm going to want about 3 rings at minimum to 5 rings at most. So I have 3 now. I'm going to go ahead and give myself a few more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that way, if I don't like any of them, I don't have to use them. Now I am going to cut this end off because I'm going to not want that spool of wire in my way when I'm cutting them. Now I am going to do this off to the side of the camera so you won't see this part, but I'll at least show you how I do it before I do anything else. Now the reason why I said I use wax is because it actually helps the blade to cut through the wire a lot faster and cleaner, more efficiently. And what you do is you just drag your saw right through that wax. Got a little coating on there, you're good to go. And when I put this over on my cutting surface, instead of sawing, like setting this down and sawing like this, where I'm going down over top of it, I found it's a lot easier if I start below and drag down that way at this angle here. And it seems to work a lot better. It cuts a lot faster for me, at least, and I have less error. So I'm going to go ahead and get this cut, and I'll be right back. Alright, so I have my closure rings cut. I'm going to set them off to the side. Now these will need to be work hardened, but I'll do them at the same time that I do the work hardening for the hook. Now for the hook, it's very simple. You can make them more elaborate if you'd like to, but for this project I'm going to make them very simple. Alright. Now these cutters that I have here, they're older cutters. They're not as sharp, even though I've sharpened them a million times, but I don't mind if they're a little bit damaged compared to my other ones. That's why I'm using these ones instead of my newer pair. You do not have to do this if you don't want to, but I am because I'm using an older pair of flush cutters. Alright, so now to get the hook started. For this hook here, I'll do it pretty much the same way that I do some of my earrings. Very simple. Turn that down on the lowest setting, just like that. And then bring that around. Just like that. So you have a nice little shepherd's hook. Fix that up a little bit here. Alright, and then I'm going to go once again to this setting here. You can use whatever setting you want, really. I don't want anything too big or too small, so this one here seems to work just fine. And curl that down a little bit, so now you have this nice little hook. And you can cut this wherever you'd like. For necklaces, I usually cut them a little bit longer, but for bracelets, I keep it a little bit shorter because the longer it is, the harder it is for somebody to get it hooked on their own without making the bracelet too tight to be able to hook it. And then once they get a hook, then it's too loose. So we want to give that a trim. Yeah, that said right about in here. As mentioned, because I'm using older trimmers for this, I'm going to go ahead and use my Rasp File to soften that up a bit so we don't have any jagged edges or anything else like that. If you're using a newer pair of cutters or a different style that has a nice clean cut, you don't have to worry so much about cleaning off the end. And then for the very tip of it, I'm going to take my smallest setting and I'm going to bring it up and around. But I don't want too much of a hook there, so I'm going to go ahead and come in with my pliers and kind of flatten that so it is more of a teardrop than a circle or even an oval, just like that. And now I am going to get out my hammer and block and start to work harden all these. So if you're making this project also, what color beads are you using? What type of beads? Will you be making these bracelets for yourself, or are you maybe going to gift them out? Or are you also a vendor and planning on having something new to add to your inventory? For me, I am a vendor. I have been vending for pretty much as long as I have been making jewelry like this, so at least 9-10 years. Alright, now this here I'm going to flatten it out very gently. As you can see, as I hammer this is kind of misshapen. That's okay. Once we're done, we'll go back and fiddle with it to make it how we want. Now, I'm making this part extra work hardened to make sure it stays nice and tight like this. So this here is pretty much done, except for I have to reshape it now that the hammer has kind of made it wonky. Now as you can see with these, I did not hammer them a whole lot. I hammered them just enough to work harden them, give them a little tiny bit of a flatness to them, but not very much. So I'm going to go ahead and reshape this down to where I want it. Just some very minor adjustments, nothing too major. I do want this to be somewhat close so that when it brings in the jump ring, it kind of has a little tiny bit of a catch, and that'll help keep it from falling off, but it's still easy to put on. So the first thing I'm going to do, besides get some of these tools out of my way, is to take my larger jump rings that I have for the closure, and I'm going to take each of them and bring them closer together. I'm going to close them up and make sure that I like the shape of them. Even with using a saw, sometimes they can still get a little bit misshapen, not nearly as much as when you use the cutters. Like this is pretty accurate. Now instead of fully closing that one up, I am going to go ahead and add the other closed ring to it and start my process for the closure with the option for a larger setting. And take your time. No need to be in a hurry, just enjoy yourself and make sure that you're happy with your finished product. Now, if you're new to jewelry making, you may be wondering why I am bringing these side to side instead of in or out and in, and it's because it keeps true to shape a lot better than if you were to try it any other way. This helps you to keep as close to a perfect circle as possible, whereas if you pull it out and then put it back in, you'll probably never end up with a perfect circle or even near perfect circle, no matter how hard you try. So I have 4 on there. I'm gonna set that extra ring off to the side to be used for another project. It'll go in my scrap wire box just like the others, or it'll be used for the next bracelet I'm making, which I guess that makes the most sense. Alright, so I have my 5 ready, along with my hook. Now to attach these, I'll open up my first jump ring and I'll set it on that bracelet, and then I'll bring these into the mix. And I'll close that up. Just like that. But I'm not done with that. I'm going to bring in these 2. I don't like that one. Okay. Now when I have it opened up, I'm going to, here's the 18 gauge jump ring that attaches my extension to the bracelet, and I'm going to put it through the extension, and then I'm going to drop it down through that 18 gauge wire. and then bring it through the bracelet wire or bracelet loop. So it's going to look like this. I'm going to do that one more time with one more. See, these rings, because I use the colors, are a bit more, I don't know, offset, which I don't really like. Now, once again, I'm going to take this through the extension hook or loop and drop it down through the 18 gauge, both of them this time, and then through the bracelet, and it's going to be behind those two 18 gauge. Make sure they're all straightened up better. So now, instead of just a jump ring, just a boring jump ring, we actually have what looks to be almost like another bead or a feature of the bracelet. So you can't really tell that that's just for utilitarian purposes, it's also for decorative purposes. So we're going to go ahead and do that on the other side and add in our hook. I'm going to go ahead and open up 3 of these real quick so that they're ready to go and I can just pick them up and place them on. Okay. So we're going to take our bracelet and we're going to put that first jump ring in there, add our hook to it, and close up that jump ring. And we're going to do the same thing with the other 2. We're going to put it through the bracelet, and then it is going to go through that 18 gauge and this. So it'll be behind. The front's going to be in front of the 18 gauge, and then the behind, or the back part, is going to be behind the other, or the same 18 gauge. So it's going to loop through it. You want to do it in the same order, because if you don't, it's not going to have that rosette look to it. It's going to kind of be twisted and not set right. So we're going to do the same thing again with this one. This one's open. We're going to put it through the ring for the bracelet. And then we're going to put it through the rings of the 18 gauge. And then through the hook. We're going to close that up. For whatever reason, that jump ring wants to argue with me. So then we have that nice rosette look. Like I said, that adds a nice extra feature to your bracelet. It's a lot more elegant than just one single jump ring, and you have the added durability of all 3 rings. So the likelihood of this bracelet coming apart on somebody is very low. It's another reason why we use the 16 gauge and we hand hammered it. We might not be soldering this, but as you can see, you give this a good tug and it's really not going anywhere. So you have a very durable yet elegant bracelet that you can make for yourself or as a gift for somebody else, or even vend if you choose. Now I do have some of these on my website if you're ever interested. If you'd like to reach out to me to learn how to make other things or need some tips and tricks, please let me know. I'll be happy to do what I can to help you out. And for our next video, I hope you'll be joining me and I will show you how to make these adorable yet simple earrings with some flower beads, some heart beads, and some butterfly beads. I hope to see you soon. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you for watching.